Know what to eat, but find yourself not eating it. Perhaps you've been on diets and off again and just wonder why you can't stick to them. The Eating For You podcast, hosted by me, Sally-Ann Pisk, will show you what's been missing so you can enjoy a healthier way of eating that lasts. Hi, Sally-Ann with you today, and it's my great pleasure to have Carolyn as my guest on the Eating For You podcast. And she has gratefully accepted to be a guest and share part of her journey with mindful eating. Welcome, Carolyn.
Thanks, Sally-Ann. I think it's good to be here.
Look, I think everyone who listens to our podcast is really appreciative to hear of others' journeys, with food, because it is something that we've all found challenging at different times. So anything you have to share about what mindful eating is will be gratefully accepted. I do know that. Okay.
Yeah, and I have benefited from other people sharing their stories too. So
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very much about the Eating For You community. And of course, ladies who do participate in our programs understand that we learn from each other. And this whole process is really about me helping you to become an expert in eating for you. And of course, that's why I call my business Eating For You as well. Before we get underway, I will share a few lines that you have kindly given to me. Carolyn is in her early 60s and lives alone. She has 3 grown-up children and 5 grandchildren. She works across 2 schools doing admin and finance work, and she really enjoys her work and the people that she works with. Carolyn is an avid reader and likes knitting, crochet, and loves going to live shows, musicals, opera, ballet, concerts, just about anything. She has type 2 diabetes and asthma, which are both well controlled. She also has arthritis, which is intermittent in severity, sometimes no symptoms at all, and other times quite painful. And she had a knee replacement operation around 12 years ago. So, Carolyn, as you know from being in our community, everybody has a journey with food. Tell us a little bit about what your journey with food has been like and how it has felt for you.
Well, from quite early on, like as a teenager, I felt very big. And now that I look back at photos, I can see that I wasn't actually big at all. And so from that age, I probably started my first diets and did all the stupid ones like the apple diet, the grapefruit diet. It took me many, many years to realise there's no magic wand.
Yeah.
And even when I read Michael Mosley's books after my diagnosis of diabetes, and I really liked what he had to say, and I started intermittent fasting and a lower carb diet, and I found all that really good, and it was a way of life rather than a diet, I felt. But there were still some restrictions, and I guess I got to the point where I knew all these things weren't working for me, but I felt like I had really damaged my relationship with food over the years of doing all those diets and things. And it was a breath of fresh air to meet Sally-Ann Pisk and Eating for Life.
Yeah, and certainly we are looking at a way that you can eat for life. And, hearing you share that, looking back at your photos, you were never a large person. And I think that's why it's really important that when we start making peace with food, and I did share this in the episode dedicated to finding peace with food, it's not just about food, it's our perception of our body and, what we're meant to be. And too many ladies have said to me, look, Sally-Ann, I realise now I was never going to be in that healthy weight range. But of course, even healthcare practitioners and our own reading, and it's even worse now with social media, everyone's telling us that we have to be in this healthy weight range. But that's not the case. It's about finding what's healthy for us as an individual. And I think also for women and for some men, we don't really appreciate what size we actually are. And, that's something that I go into more depth in our body image project. So I think there's a number of factors. And of course, the restriction is a big one as well, because I know you've shared in the past that not only have you felt that dieting hasn't worked, it's perhaps made you feel like you weren't successful. How did dieting, sort of going from one thing to another, really impact on you, Carolyn?
Well, definitely made me feel terrible, made me think that I was a failure
Yeah.
and that I was a hopeless case. And of course, that brought on a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of harmful self-talk. And yeah, it was like I had a person on each of my shoulders saying, don't eat that. Someone else saying, yes, but you want it, you can have it. The other person saying, don't eat that. It was horrible. And yeah, I can't believe it's taken me 60 years to realize that mindful eating I can make peace with all of that, which has been amazing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Carolyn, because you're not alone. I obviously are very aware of conversations outside of our community as well about, women struggling with dieting. And on a recent holiday, I actually met some women who were struggling with food and really feeling quite inadequate and, that self-loathing and that discomfort. And I know that they really benefited to hear a different perspective because too often, especially, during perimenopause and menopause, when our hormones change, there's often a lot of stress in our life as well, that women are fighting with their bodies, whereas that's not the way forward. The more we fight, the more stressed we get, the more cortisol we have, and that makes it harder for us to maintain healthier eating. And as I've shared on other podcasts as well, when our cortisol levels are elevated for longer periods of time, not only do we want to eat more, we actually put on more body fat as well. So that piece with food is really important. Looking back at your journey with food, have there been any turning points for you in your life where maybe for a while that you found some peace with food or you were more comfortable with your weight? Anything at all, or perhaps some aha moments that you could share?
I mean, I did lots of dieting and I had lots of turning points in my mind.
Mm,
Like when I turned 40, I wasn't going to be fat in my 40s, then I wasn't going to be fat in my 50s,
mm,
and then I wasn't going to be fat in my 60s. And, that's all negative talk that was happening in my mind constantly.
yes.
Yeah, I did have a few turning points when my marriage broke down. I lost some weight, but it really wasn't for any healthy eating, really. I was just heartbroken and didn't eat at all. Then when I got my diabetes diagnosis, I thought, well, I really have to do something now. I have to be healthy. And I'd say I made a little bit of progress with the Michael Mosley information, but not enough to really be what I call have a normal relationship with food or to be a mindful eater.
Yeah.
Things like my satiety and really thinking about what I felt like eating and how much I felt like eating. And yeah, those things were kind of all new to me
Yeah.
when I started your program.
Oh, and look, you're not alone. I remember Annette, another one of my clients, sharing. She had she'd got to the point where she knew restricting food wasn't going to work. And because of her health and a family history of illnesses, she made the decision to go down the road of bariatric surgery. And she went through that after many years of careful consideration. But she never learnt what hunger was, what satiety was, what fullness was. And they're basic intuitive skills that we have. But because we've been brainwashed really and reprogrammed by all of this dieting, we lose confidence in ourselves. We don't even recognize these signals anymore because we're not following them. We're following a meal plan, we're following food rules, and we forget that our body is actually designed to help us detect, as you said, whether you've had enough to eat with satiety signals, what you even feel like eating, and perhaps, why you feel the way you do about food. So what you share is definitely not unusual, unfortunately. And this sort of emotional roller coaster that we get on with food has much to do with that dieting program. And as you said, can start in our teenage years and even in late childhood for some women.
Especially now, I think, with social media, that younger and younger girls are feeling like they
Yeah.
are expected to diet.
And I suppose for myself, I sometimes feel like I'm a very small voice out there in the world. And I'm not the only one. I do have other colleagues who are really, trying to promote mindful eating, take the focus off weight. And don't get me wrong, certainly our body composition and the amount of body fat we have does affect our health and happiness, but it's not weight. It's not.
No,
It's
no.
not about a number on the scales, and that's where we've gone really astray, unfortunately. And as I said in the past, myself included, when I first graduated, it wasn't really until I understood how disordered my own relationship with food was and how weight on the scales was meaningless, then, I could start helping other people, take the focus off weight, but still take care of themselves. And for many women, because of their past eating habits, they do actually lose weight. But of course, I'm encouraging it to be a loss of fat rather than a loss of lean muscle and bone mass as well. So tell us a little bit about mindful eating from your experience and how you have found it different to trying to stick to a diet.
Well, for one thing, it's been very freeing to lose those two voices in my mind. And it's just so sensible. Everything you say is so sensible and so believable. But I have been, conditioned to dieting mentality for over 50 years. So as soon as there's a hiccup in my life or a stress, I do go back to that automatic way of just shoving stuff in my mouth. But every time I misstep, and then when I recover, I think, oh, well, that took less time and I'm getting better at it. I'm finding that I really have to practice it.
And you'll probably recall on many coaching calls, I've talked about those degrees of mindfulness. And I know Janice shared with us recently on a podcast, before you start mindfully eating, you don't even know that you're not mindfully eating. And what I mean by that is really
Yeah.
understanding why we're eating and what our triggers are for eating when we're not hungry. And I talk about that very thing about, well, do we check in with our mindfulness approach at the first thought of, oh, I feel like eating? Do we check in then? Or do we check in once we're in, nearly inside the refrigerator or the pantry looking for food? Or do we check in after we've finished eating?
After we've eaten, yes.
That's right. And I've eaten mindlessly as well. I have a great story about being on the phone to my husband and a whole bag of potato crisps disappearing. I was actually hungry, but I wasn't eating mindfully, and it certainly wasn't the best thing to be eating. But that's the case. Often we say, oh, where did that piece of chocolate go? Where did that piece of cake go? Oh my goodness, where did all the chips go? And that's because we haven't eaten mindfully. And by eating mindfully, as you said, you can become more aware of those non-hunger triggers for eating, such as stress. And I know ladies who have been practicing mindful eating, for maybe 3 years, they say that with that daily practice of mindfulness, then the management of stress improves as well. So there's kind of two things happening. We actually get to tolerate stress in our lives more wisely and with more confidence. We manage stress. So there's less stress eating because we're actually decreasing those ripples. And we're also developing other strategies to deal with stress. And, certainly I see that as part of my role, because sometimes we have had traumas in our life that are best supported by other healthcare practitioners. That's just one example where I may refer on to support people as well. So when you misstep your mindful eating or make a less mindful choice, how do you feel about getting back on track? You mentioned it's much easier for you now.
I think I try and be kind to myself,
Yeah.
and I don't fret about it. And I'm curious about what happened. And both those things, curiosity and being kind to myself, have come from you, Sally Ann.
Yeah, well, it comes very much from the mindfulness approach. And I have had ladies who have completed the program several years ago email me out of the blue and say, I just want to tell you that learning self-compassion has been one of the most powerful things that I have learned from the Eating For You programs. And that is about being kind to ourselves, about not judging ourselves. But I think that element of curiosity, and that's something that I would say I became more aware of through our group coaching programs, was being able to observe, to question without judgment. And that's the curiosity. It's like, well, why did this happen? Or why did I do that? Or how about I try this instead? And it's really a tool for problem solving. And that's why it works, because your solution is different to perhaps what mine was and to what another lady's is as well. But that's where the steps that we teach in the Eating For You program really help, because they're teaching you how to problem solve. So I really love that you're getting more confidence in that as well, Carolyn. So in terms of looking forward with mindful eating, are you feeling that it is something that you can maintain, even though it can be challenging at times?
It really has changed my life for the better.
Yeah.
And, nothing to do with weight or my health even, or my HbA1c, but just how I feel in myself is, just totally different. And of course, all the other things are flow-on benefits.
Yeah.
But for the first time in over 60 years, to feel like food's not controlling me is, nothing short of amazing.
Yes. And tell me about your introduction to mindful eating. I know we met through one of my library talks that I did a
Yes,
couple of
that's right.
years ago. And you did join me on a free call, and you were flying with the mindful eating. Like, it was something that made sense to you, and you were already applying it from what you'd learned from my talk, but also the Eating For You book.
Yeah.
But then, of course, we can get stuck. So how did the Foundation's mindful eating program help you? Because there's different components to that. There's the online learning, there's the weekly sort of check-in emails, and of course the coaching. So how did that help you, I suppose, put the mindful eating into practice with more confidence?
I think the course information and the pace of it was very good at helping you to kind of consolidate one practice, one small change before you went on to the next one.
Yeah.
And so I generally did a module a week.
Yeah.
So I spent quite a bit of time reading and journaling. I really enjoyed the one-on-one sessions,
Yeah.
but I also learnt so much from other people on the group sessions that initially I didn't think I would enjoy those, but I did. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think I had a overseas holiday, and when I came back, I had influenza A. I was quite unwell for a number of weeks and certainly did misstep then. But I went back to the course and some of the information and yeah, found that it was something that I could get back to, especially because I know it's so good for me, like
Yes.
so good for my mental health and my physical health. And yeah, I just feel a whole lot better when I'm doing it. So I want to do it because I think you know how good it is for you. You know how good you feel. Why can't, why don't you just do it?
Yes.
But I also am realizing that I've had a lot of years of that dieting mentality and that I can't expect just to snap out of it, but I just have to go back to the practice and comes good again.
Yes, you've touched on a few important things there, I think, Carolyn, where we can get ourselves caught up. And that is really the importance of focusing on one thing at a time because it is designed in that way for a reason, and that's to build your confidence. Because once we can nail one thing, we can then move on to the next one. And you're quite right. Those years of dieting programming take a while to be removed, but we get better at identifying what is actually going on up here and, in our head and, in our heart as well, because there's an emotional sort of reaction to food when we've been on that dieting roller coaster. So thanks for sharing that because I think a few ladies that I've had, calls with in the past have started like yourself and yep, this makes sense, off I go, but then get stuck. And that's because of some of those underlying dieting rules, perhaps beliefs about can I really do this? And I think it's that combination of what you learn with the online resources plus the coaching calls that can help you get better at uncovering what's actually causing you to fall back into those old habits because that's all it is. It's a habit and it's learning how to break that habit.
The automaticity too of that eating that you've been used to for years and years
Yeah,
and not being mindful. Yeah. I mean, mindful is a real skill that I think you get better at the more you practice it.
that's
Mm.
right. And that's what I often say because I get so frustrated to the verge of angry when I see things on social media or I might, see things in, mainstream media about developing new habits. And I'm thinking, no, 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 it's not about developing new, sort of eating habits that I eat this for breakfast, I eat this for lunch, I eat this
Yeah.
for my evening meal. The only habit I encourage my clients to develop is the practice of mindfulness because that is what will actually allow you to adapt to illness, to adapt to stress in your life, to perhaps adapt to new foods or, when you're traveling, for example, because you'll be in the moment. And as you said
Mm.
before, I can now pick, whether I'm hungry or not, perhaps how much I need and what I actually feel like eating. So when we look at the changes perhaps that have happened to your eating, I know you have quite a few. There's been some related more to your approach to eating, but then there's been actual changes to your choices as well. So what have been some of the important changes for you?
Probably not eating. And this is the only restriction you put on me, Sally-Ann. And I found it a lot easier to do than what I thought it was going to be initially. But I used to always have a little sweet treat and a cup of tea or coffee at night after my main meal. And you said to me, because of my diabetes, that sugar is harder to process the later you have. And you said to me, if you're going to have a chocolate or a sweet, have it at lunchtime.
Yeah.
So that has been, yeah, a big change, but actually quite an easy one. And I generally don't have it at lunchtime either.
Yes.
I do pack it in my lunchbox, but some days I'll have it, but most days I don't.
And that's about the permission to eat as well, Carol. And it's different for everyone who has diabetes in terms of the degree of insulin function, perhaps the medications you're taking. That can impact, obviously, on when you eat and how much you eat as well. But trying to have that flexibility. But that kind of guideline fits more into the mindful nutrition. It's understanding how different nutrients impact our physical body when we have a disease like diabetes, and how we best support our body as well. Because you mentioned earlier about health being a priority, but of course we know that's only one of 9 drivers for eating. So we have to understand as best we can how we can meet our other reasons for eating, such as pleasure, but look after our health as well. Are there any other changes that you've made that have been maybe significant or even small ones that have helped you out in some way?
Yeah, well, I was fasting overnight until 11 a.m.
Yes.
and I think we compromised on a 9 a.m. breakfast for me instead. And that's worked out fine.
Yes.
And oats in a jar I'd never had before, and now it's my favourite breakfast.
It's really interesting. Just a few weeks ago in Eating for You community Facebook group, I shared my oat breakfast because I had to catch a train and, take my breakfast if it's early in the morning. And yeah, quite a few ladies asked for that recipe. So if you're tuning in and you're not a member of the Eating for You community, it is a free Facebook group for women. And you'll find the recipe there, or you can request the recipe from that group as well.
One of the other things I've done is add more legumes to my diet, which, yeah, wasn't that hard. And I do enjoy them.
Yeah, and I think legumes are great because they don't actually have a lot of flavour. So if we add them into soups or curries, even stir fries or salads, they pick up the flavour of the other foods and the sauces that we
I do.
put with them. And they're great from a protein and fibre point of view. So they're great for that satiety as well. So if we are aiming to eat mostly, 3 times a day, then that combination of protein and fibre are going to make us feel satiated for much longer. And they're so good for our gut health as well. So yeah, they're one of nature's little wonders. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, yes, ladies in our community want more recipes. I need to get some more out there for people so they can start adding those wonderful foods in more regularly. So
Mm.
we've talked about some of the food changes, and you've touched on the attitude or mindset changes a little bit, but I know you've mentioned to me before about just tuning into your appetite and tuning into the flavors of food, perhaps some of the experience of eating. How has that changed for you?
Tasting the actual textures and flavors of my food was, yeah, quite eye-opening to me and just made me realize how much I had been missing. So I did find that really quite amazing. I really liked being an observer as well and being curious. And I found well, still find the sleuthing questions. So I just have to remember to think about those when I'm thinking about eating.
Yes.
But I think that they're really helpful.
Yes, and that's just a practice again about with the mindfulness. And I know a lot of my clients have the appetite sleuth questions perhaps inside the cupboard or on the fridge door just as a prompt. Because as we're saying, developing a practice does take patience and practice. So that's really important. But what you mentioned about actually tasting your food and noticing what the texture is, quite a lot of my clients say, Sally Ann, I know I'm eating mindfully when I taste my food. So that's a real biggie. And I think sometimes we forget that nourishment from food isn't just the nutrients in food. It's noticing the experience of eating and being able to eat without distraction is so important. Carolyn, is there anything else you would like to share about mindful eating?
I would just like to share one thing. My HbA1c was 8 in February, the highest it had ever been. And then the most recent one I had was 6.6, and my doctor was delighted with me, and I was really happy too. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And you feel that that can be reflected in changes that you've made to your eating?
Can be all down to eating food for you, I think.
Well, I just like to add in there, no, it's your application or adoption of a mindful eating practice that's got you there. So yeah, that's really encouraging, isn't it? And I sometimes think when we take our focus off those health goals and really just focus on our habits, then our body just rewards us, or it feels better because of the way that we're eating, perhaps the way we're sleeping. Of course, movement's important as well, and looking after our stress levels is important as well, to readings such as the HbA1c. But I know so many, women will say to me, I need to get my HbA1c down, or my doctor wants me to lose 20 kilos before I have my knee operation. And they're just stressful. We sort of need to step back from that and look at, well, what can I actually do to support my HbA1c? What are those things that I can do throughout the day to improve my diabetes health? Or what can I do to take some weight off without feeling like I have to lose weight? And it is really important, I think, to step back and look at all the factors in our life that impact on our health and our body weight. And as I was saying earlier, especially our body composition, because that is far more important to our health and happiness than a number on the scales. Carolyn, thanks so much for sharing.
I had one more thing to say, if I may.
Yes,
And
you may.
I learnt this tip from one of the ladies on the group chat.
Yeah.
Who said she wakes up in the morning and thinks, what can she do for her health today? How can she make today a healthy day?
Yeah.
And I just love that. And I do that every morning too now. Think about what exercise I'm going to do, what I'm going to eat, whether I'm going to listen to a podcast or read something, or all these things to build on the practice that I've learned. Thank you to that lady. I can't even remember what her name was, but
No, that's all right. And it was actually something we had discussed on an earlier call to help her set the vision for the day. And I think that is what I have learned so much from Ayurvedic medicine, is the importance of that first half hour of our day where we actually set our vision for the day. Doesn't mean we get it, 100% throughout the day, but we have that intention set. We say to ourselves, well, I've got that time then to go for a walk, or I've got my meditation time here. And if we set that direction in the morning, we're more likely to succeed. So it's a really important and valuable time of the day. But equally, it's important to pick small things to do so we are realistic and we can actually achieve those things as well. And things that are going to make a difference for us and what we need at that time. So, Carolyn, once again, thanks for sharing. And if you've been listening along today and are curious about what Carolyn has learnt about mindful eating, then get started like Carolyn did and join me in a free mindful eating strategy call. And that really is all about finding out what your challenges are with food, what you'd like to achieve, and whether the Eating For You approach is the best option for you. So I look forward to sharing with you again next week. But just remember, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And if you've loved this episode, let us know and share it on your social media pages. You have been listening to the Eating For You podcast with Sally Ann Pisk. If you are looking for additional support to enjoy a lifelong way of healthier eating, then join me in a free 30-minute call to see if our approach is right for you. I have included the link to book an obligation-free call in this episode's notes.